Ukraine has called for an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of Russian troops as the country's delegation arrived for talks with Russia. According to reports, Zelensky's office demanded withdrawal of all Russian troops, including those in Crimea and Donbass. In the Ukraine side, the high-level delegation included the Minister of Defense, advisor to the President of Ukraine, and Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Zelensky himself on Sunday set low expectations for the meeting, but said it was worth a try. Ukraine's Western allies have ramped up measures to bring in a diplomatic dialogue on the table. On Monday, French President Emmanuel Macron spoke to both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. During the call, Putin laid out conditions for ending the war. Putin said that a quick settlement is only possible if Russia's legitimate security interests are unconditionally taken into account, including recognition of Russian sovereignty over Crimea and denazification of the Ukrainian state and ensuring its neutral status. Macron also reiterated the demand of the international community to stop the Russian offensive against Ukraine and reaffirmed the need to implement an immediate ceasefire. Macron also called on Putin to respect international humanitarian laws and allow aid shipments to reach the population during his call with Putin. The United Nations' two major bodies, the 193-nation General Assembly and the more powerful 15-member Security Council, met separately to discuss the five-day-old war. The 193-member United Nations General Assembly held a rare emergency session over the ex-Soviet state's invasion. The extraordinary debate was just the 11th. The assembly was held in the United Nations' 77-year history. Russia faced urgent calls to end its unprovoked and unjustified assault on Ukraine. Inside the General Assembly Hall, nations after nations urged peace. From the podium, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded the fighting in Ukraine must stop.
Although Russian strikes are reportedly largely targeting Ukrainian military facilities, we have credible accounts of residential buildings, critical civilian infrastructure, and other non-military targets sustaining heavy damage. This escalating violence, which is resulting in civilian deaths, including children, is totally unacceptable. Enough is enough.
Ukraine's UN ambassador, Sergei Kislita, described Putin's order to put Russian nuclear forces on alert as madness. Kislita told the General Assembly, if Ukraine does not survive, international peace will not survive. Kislita told the Council that Russia persists in its aggression despite its initial invasion plan failed.
If he wants to kill himself, he doesn't need to use nuclear arsenal. He has to do what the guy in Berlin did in a bunker in May 1945. If Ukraine does not survive, international peace will not survive. If Ukraine does not survive, the United Nations will not survive. Have no illusions. If Ukraine does not survive, we cannot be surprised if democracy fails next. Now we can save Ukraine, save the United Nations, save democracy, and defend the values we believe in.
Representatives of more than 100 countries are expected to speak over 3 days. The global body will decide if it will support a resolution that demands Russia to immediately withdraw its troops from Ukraine. A vote is expected on Wednesday. It must reach a 2/3 threshold to pass. The resolution is non-binding, but will serve as a marker of how isolated Russia is. Russia is encountering deepening global isolation. During the rare emergency special session, Russia defended its decision to invade its neighbor. Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, said its action in Ukraine are being distorted and thwarted. Both meetings follow Russia's veto Friday of a Security Council resolution demanding withdrawal of all Russian troops and immediate halt on attack on Ukraine. There is no veto right at the General Assembly. It had held a similar vote in 2014 condemning Russia's seizure of Crimea and obtained 100 votes in support. The UN Security Council held a separate emergency meeting on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine, while the UN Human Rights Council voted in Geneva to hold its own urgent session. The Council will hold an urgent debate on March 3rd. Well, for more on that, we were earlier joined by our correspondent, Susan Teherani from New York. This is what she had to say.
We did hear that everything is on the table, nothing is off the table, and so far the sanctions have focused really on the banking system. I think the major issue right now is on Russia's oil and gas sector, something that a lot of lawmakers on Capitol Hill are waiting perhaps to see whether or not the United States will take unilateral action against that. But the issue with that is something that the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations also mentioned during an interview, is that the Biden administration is wary right now because it's also an importer of Russian gas. Remember, at 500,000 barrels a day, it doesn't want to jack up prices here in the United States, but moving forward, yes, they did say that they will impose more sanctions if necessary.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has triggered political, strategic, as well as economic response from the West. In the strongest economic sanctions yet, the United States and Europe have banished big Russian banks from the main global payments system SWIFT. The move appeared to be dealing a severe economic blow. Worried Moscovites fear that new Western sanctions will trigger shortages of cash and disrupt payment systems. Russians were seen waiting in long queues outside ATMs. There are concerns that bank cards may cease to function or that banks would limit cash withdrawals.
Ну, неприятно, на самом деле, последствия, потому что я, допустим, привык жить в 21 веке, не имея с собой пластиковой карты, не имея ничего. У меня все установлено в телефоне, все банковские структуры. Наличными я уже не пользуюсь на протяжении 5 лет, наверное. Поэтому для меня это очень сильно ударит, потому что надо заказывать карточку. И как с ней жить, я, если честно, уже не помню.
Some Russian banks have been blocked from the SWIFT global payment systems, while other measures limit Moscow's use of a $630 billion war chest. The limit on the use of over $630 billion in international reserves could prove even costlier for the Russian economy. There are warnings of catastrophic economic damage. The measures curb the ability of Russians to keep large amounts of cash in EU banks. Sanctioned banks sought to assuage any fears over money supplies and online payment systems. Russia's biggest lender, Sberbank, said it was not seeing any interruptions in customer transactions through its own and partner payment systems. State Development Bank, VEB, said external restrictions will not stop its efforts to work on supporting projects within Russia. Now, the bank has said new restrictions will not have a significant impact beyond the use of its bank cards abroad. The central bank, however, advised people to carry their bank cards with them. They were informed that mobile payment systems may not work at all with terminals or online shops. The Russian